After making quite a splash at the Malaysia Auto Show, MG Malaysia today has finally officially announced the pricing for their new MG S5 EV. Now, the MG S5 EV will be available in Malaysia in 3 variants, that being the Com Long Range and Lux Long Range. The base model will run a 42 kWh LFP battery, whereas the long range models get a 62 kWh LFP battery, giving it in the WLTP range of 340 for the base model or 430 for the higher end model. However, in terms of power outputs, they remain exactly the same at 170 PS and 250 Newton meters. Now, in terms of charging, the base model accepts up to 120 kilowatt DC, whereas the higher end models accept up to 150 kilowatts DC, meaning a 10 to 80% charge takes less than half an hour. However, in terms of AC charging, both get a rather paltry 7 kilowatts. Now, the MG S5 EV represents the first of the new generation of MG products, which is why the design language is markedly different from what we've seen from the brand before. So, for example, while we still get a split headlight design, the design itself has now been reprofiled and made a little bit sleeker, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more modern, in order to represent this car's latest model status. Despite that, it still integrates things like the signature MG lower grille, which is a callback to a design that was first seen from the late 1960s. Now, as we move further down the side, aerodynamics have also been given a very clear emphasis, with side breathers here that help smooth the air channel over the front wheels. Now, in terms of rolling stock, there are 17-inch alloys for the base Com model, whereas the Com Long Range and the Lux Long Range get 18 alloy wheels. The finishing is also different, with black alloys on the base model and dual-tone alloys on the higher end one. In terms of overall exterior specifications, however, they do remain broadly similar, except the higher end models get a panoramic sunroof. Now, the checkered pattern that we saw from the DRLs in the front are also repeated onto the positioning lights in the rear, which also see a full LED light bar going all the way across, which does make this car look a little bit sleeker, a little bit neater, and a little bit more modern. There is also a dual tier spoiler with one up here and one down here, as well as a lot of complex surfacing around the back in order to make this car look a lot more fresh. Now, the MG S5 EV will be competing against vehicles like the Proton EMA 7, the BYD Atto 3, among many others, which means that this car does need to stand out in terms of its showroom appeal, and I do think that it does that very well. Now, behind the tailgate, you will find a pretty decent amount of space, because this car comes with a dual level boot floor, which can be adjusted for either better verticality or a flat loading floor. And of course, if you need more room, the rear seats can be folded 60-40. Underneath the boot floor, you'll actually find all the tools necessary should you find yourself in an emergency, except for a spare tire, although that's kind of normal for an EV. However, I do think the MG S5 is decently practical and should serve pretty well as a family runabout for people with maybe 2.5 children. Now, the interior of the MG S5 EV is just as good today as it was when we first saw the preview initially, with a much more mature design to this cabin, as well as the use of high quality materials. Everything that you can see and touch is lovely and soft, with lovely stitched materials down here, down the side, with only harder wearing plastics a little bit further down. Ergonomics is great too, with plenty of adjustment in the steering wheel and plenty of physical buttons, allowing you to manipulate everything you need to without too much issue whatsoever. There's a wireless charging pad here, as well as a little slot here should you want to hold your phone upright, which is certainly nice to see. And of course, this central screen controls the majority of the car's functions, although you still get physical buttons for your HVAC controls, your gear selector, indicators, obviously, as well as for your panoramic sunroof. All of this works great towards a car that is made for people who enjoy driving. Now, one thing about the upholstery I'd like to mention are these seats. Now, while only the driver's seat is powered even in this Lux long range model, the choice of faux leather as well as this lovely fabric does mean that this car feels very upmarket. These side bolsters are decently supportive, although they are not so hard that they will squeeze you in place. And overall, this feels like a very positive place to sit and do many, many miles in, which I certainly hope to do very, very soon. Now, with the front seat set in my driving position, about 170 centimeters, you can see I have acres of knee room and a pretty decent amount of headroom despite the standard fit panoramic sunroof with electric sunblind. On top of that, because the front seats are mounted quite high, I have plenty of space for my feet underneath the seat in front of me, which means that I can get pretty comfortable back here. Now, of course, there are a couple of air conditioning vents, a singular USB-C port, but what I'd like to point out is the fact that because MG has been in the car business for about 100 years, they actually know what they're doing. So for example, material quality back here, not so great, but the seat base is nice and long and angled great, which means that as I'm sat here, it feels very comfortable indeed. And while these two outer seats have ISOFIX mounts, and of course can be folded 60-40 like I mentioned earlier, and if you need, or if you have more flotsam, there's space behind the back front seats as well as space in the door pockets. There's also a fold-down armrest which floats in place in a nice solid fashion, which does feel far more upmarket than those that simply flop down. Toyota. The MG S5 EV will be on display here at Mid-Valley Mega Mall throughout the weekend, where not only will you be able to see the actual retail prices, but for the first 500 customers, you'll get 6,000 ringgit off your new MG S5 EV, as well as a complimentary 7 kilowatt wall box charger. Now, all cars will come with a 7-year, 150,000 kilometer warranty for the vehicle itself, 8-year, 160,000 kilometer warranty for the high voltage battery and propulsion system, as well as an 8-year warranty for that motor. All of this comes with your new MG S5, and if you'd like to test drive one or learn a little bit more about the MG S5 EV, you can do so either through our preview right here in the channel, and be sure to stay tuned for more coverage. That concludes our coverage of the MG S5 EV launch here in Mid-Valley Mega Mall. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care and stay safe.